Well, it's time for the final reveal. One quick announcement. As you get towards the end of Ken and I's discussion, it'll seem like everything's coming to a close, but please stay tuned. There is a part 2. We have a special guest for you. I hope you enjoy it.
Hello, Ken Spriggs here, and it's time for the final reveal of the Predator POD ship.
Okay, and welcome back, everybody. It is now time for our final reveal of our Predator pod. And before we get started here, let's give you a brief look at both completed projects. I have to say this has been such a fun project to work on. You know, the whole purpose behind these buddy builds, of course, is the give the viewer the opportunity to see two modelers approach the same subject matter or the same model kit. And it's always fun to see how everything evolves, because even though you might have similar ideas at the beginning, it always turns out a little different. And certainly in this particular situation, what ended up happening is we have an out-of-the-box build, which is really what mine turned out to be. So this gives you the chance to see what the kit will be like if you just use the parts that are included in the kit, and of course you're using your own painting skills and techniques, versus a modified kit like what Ken has produced here with not only modifications to the kit itself, but also lighting, which turned out fantastic. So let's go ahead and get started with the final reveal. And Ken, let's go ahead and begin with giving us some maybe some impressions about the model kit, and maybe what your favorite parts of the build and what you found most challenging.
All right, definitely a very unique build. A lot of different elements that I didn't really expect when starting it. First of all, building a spaceship and also building a figure. The figure itself was actually very detailed and involved a lot of painting and a lot of different elements that you would normally associate with building just a figure as a model versus building a spaceship and also a figure together. So definitely a lot of elements involved in it. I really liked the details on the kit, and I liked how they all came out with paints and lots of paints used on this, obviously. Clad, oil paints and acrylic paints, different weathering techniques to get a really cool looking figure from it. So I really enjoyed doing that.
And was there a particular part of the build that you found to be most challenging, or any glitches that you ran along the way? Or
yeah, definitely. The modifications were a big challenge all the way through the whole build, mainly just because the ship isn't designed to do that. And the way that it was made, if I could do it again, instead of using the little stem part on the three pieces to modify, I would have just cut them off entirely, put my own on something that I can actually work with. Because unfortunately, it's just not really in the right position, so the hinges are not exactly the way they ought to be, and it makes it more challenging. It worked out in the end, but I would have done it differently had I had it to do over and just made my own piece, just, built the whole structure itself rather than trying to modify what was already there.
Yeah, right. And modifying a kit from the production standpoint would be probably a big task. That would be something that if they could redesign the kit or maybe modify the kit, it certainly would be interesting to put a hinge like that, because I think I mentioned to you after I glued mine on there, it seems like it's only this one little notch and this one little piece that's holding it up there, and it's balanced nice enough, but I hate to think that if I'm transporting it to a model show, I mean, that's one advantage that you have with yours is you can easily close it, pack it up, but I'm like, just moving this thing around, I'm like, oh my God, if it just tips over, I mean, it snaps off, and then you're pretty much done. So I may go back and do some sort of modification like that, but I thought it was really ingenious how you came up with your little modifications to really make it work with that, because I didn't even think about that. You realize that kit was not made to open up that way, and of course it's going to position differently as you open it, so you had to kind of think yourself out of that and come up with some modifications so that could work properly. Yeah, great. And also you made the side pods open up as well. That's a nice touch.
Right. And those are actually even trickier than the top one, mainly because of the same thing, that they don't, I think the idea is that little square peg that's on it, it's designed that it fits when it's open, it's 90 degrees off of when it's closed.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's too much of a change. And so me drilling a hole through that or even modifying it and putting holes through it just is still real tight tolerance.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a problem. If I had just snipped that whole thing off and drilled into it and put my own whatever, I could have positioned it whatever way I wanted.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been better. Obviously, I'm not going back and doing it again.
Right.
But that was the biggest challenge, and several times some pieces broke off, and I had to glue them back on and get them to where they need to be. But it worked out.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I know that some modelers that are watching our final reveal here and have followed through the build, especially if they're beginning a modeler, they probably sit back and go, how does he think of these things, particularly with the lighting? So can you tell us what your thought processes were as you were trying to kind of come up with an idea on how to light the interior?
Yeah, sure. I mean, initially, I only wanted to use like 2 lights because I didn't want it to be too crazy for the interior lighting. So then after I started thinking about it, I didn't want just some bare LEDs sticking there. So I thought of some way to try to hide them or some way to control where they are. So initially I just started with a piece of, it was like an open kind of a tube. Light would be in it. And then it just kind of evolved. And a lot of times what I'll do is look back on some other materials that I have, like the fiber optic, both of them I already had in my possession for a couple of years, actually.
Sure.
So the side lighted LED or fiber optic I hadn't used before, but I went and dug it up and thought, oh yeah, this is great stuff because it will glow as opposed to, just trying to put a light in something like a light box.
Yeah.
Also, those super thin fiber optics, they're really pretty crappy. I got them from eBay. They look colored on the outside, but there's no color coming through them.
Yeah.
Were thin enough to do what I wanted as far as his 3 little. And again, that evolved. It started with just, here's a little thing. I could drill a hole in that. I could put a little Z LED in there. And then I thought, well, what if I put 3 little tiny fiber optics and snip them off right at the edge? You could see maybe 3 little dots.
Right.
Once I put them in and they were sticking out, they looked kind of like the lasers. And I said, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So evolved.
Yeah, and it's also nice how you made it look like it fits in too, like decorating it or detailing it, I should say, around these little modifications that you made. Really makes it look fairly seamless, like it actually even came that way.
A lot of times the issue is you have to work with what you have. So because I was dealing with limited space there at the top around him, I knew I'd have to do something that would fit in those tiny little spots. So once I came up with the idea of just the plain, styrene tube that I cut out some sections and put the fiber optic in, then it became easier to understand. I can just hide the wiring behind what looks like some metal conduits or some metal. And I've used that before too, where I just wrap thin styrene stripping around something, and glue it, and it looks like a corrugated kind of a tube.
Right. And I can just hear as you're talking here, how much fun that is to actually come up with this sort of stuff. Sometimes I find myself, my mind's like even racing when I go to bed at night. I still have all these ideas I'm trying to run through my head. But it is part of the fun, is coming up with this sort of thing, and then just to kind of see how it all comes together, and when it actually works, of course. That's even the best part. But I compliment you on that. It was a fantastic modification that you made there. And I know George, by the way, who each of us have been emailing me about this. George, again, is the founder of Blackheart Model, is all excited about these modifications that you made. And by the way, I wanted to mention to everybody, we had planned on having George here today. We just couldn't quite coordinate our schedules here, but he is all excited about the fact that we did this for our Buddy Build project. Well, that's great. Any other comments you wanted to make? Oh, I wanted to make a shout out actually to Mark Fraley for providing us, once again, these little plaques that he designed as STL files. These, of course, the formats that we use for 3D printing, and it adds just that extra touch, and I really like the way that you painted yours up there. It looks great.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a cool feature, and I'm glad he did that. I was going to ask about it, actually, before you sent it. I was even thinking about it that day.
Yeah.
Had to make one for us.
Yeah, it's so funny. I almost forgot about it. He actually sent that to me almost immediately after he found out we were making this Buddy Build. So, so he made that for us. So thanks again, Mark. I know Ken and I really appreciate that. Okay, very good. Any other final remarks you want to make before we get on to mine here?
No, definitely a very, very extensive build. Lots of things involved in it, a lot more than I had anticipated, but really fun about it. Really love how it turned out. It is a fantastic kit. I mean, let's give credit where credit's due. If it wasn't for this amazing design of this ship, and the phenomenal casting of this in the figure and the ship, I mean, and I've said oftentimes that my result, even though I put my talent in it and I can add my own touch and everything, if I don't start with a fantastic model, then it's going to be a lot harder to get a fantastic.
So now, before we move on to mine, I just wanted to review. If you remember, at the very beginning of the build, Ken's plan was to do, of course, the exterior painting and detailing, but he also wanted to do interior lighting, add a hinge for the cockpit door, and, of course, do jungle foliage for his terrain, and he hit all of those points. So great build, Ken. Okay, so it's now time to get on to mine, and as I said, it is an out-of-the-box build, or at least that's what it turned out to be. I had mentioned at the beginning of my at the introduction to all of this that I did not plan on doing any lighting after looking at the kit. Ken was a lot more brave into drilling into the kit. I just didn't want to. There were a lot of reasons why I just, after he lit his model, because him and I were kind of on the same track when we were trying to think about lighting as well. Do we put a small little SMD there and just let it glow? And if that's the case, why would there just be one SMD sitting there? And so, again, love the way his turned out. All right, so it's now time to go over my build. And first, let's just kind of quickly look over my objectives, which were to paint, of course, and detail the interior and exterior of the ship and figure, create a display base with jungle foliage and terrain, and was thinking about installing green glowing lights underneath the ship and surrounding foliage. So I have to say my favorite part of the build was painting, and it's hard to pick between the ship and the figure, but I guess I'd have to say the ship. The one thing about the ship is that there is no reference here, so it's definitely up to the builder. The ship, of course, already looks alien designed, so the goal was to try and choose a color that would also look out of this world. So I happened to come across this paint called Green Gold, which I thought would fit the bill here, and in the end it worked out quite nice, combining that with a base color of black and Vallejo's brass. And the ship itself also has these peaks and points to it, which I think are really cool. And so as I was applying the green gold, what I did was accentuate the paint in those areas, and in the end I ended up with some nice contrast. And I agree with you, Ken. The model is literally divided into two parts, the ship and the figure, which is a major part of the kit. Figures are often a secondary part in my mind, but here it's definitely critical to devote just as much attention to it. It's always fun to try and replicate the look of something, and this required various colors and techniques to make them look like the reference photos that I was using. And by the way, I was able to create an additional claw, cutting it from thin styrene to replace the one I lost, so I'm happy about that. So the biggest challenge for me was the base, and I felt my initial attempt was just falling short of what I wanted. This took stepping back in the project to find a new direction, and thanks, Ken, for really helping out here with this. Deviating, first of all, from that rectangular shape was the first step, and then moving to the look of rock or stone along with all of the other foliage made for a more minimalist looking base, which I think in the end complements the ship really well. Creating a jungle terrain requires a lot of dense foliage, at least that's what I was after, and the more time I devoted to my first attempt, the more I was just falling short. And as for my last objective, which is to add lights to the base, I decided to not pursue that because I did test it, and it just wasn't, you weren't able to see it. So I decided just to kind of stay the course there. Since I wasn't lighting the ship, I might as well just not light the base either, and I'm happy I decided not to do that. So in the end, I think I'm pretty happy with the way mine turned out. It is such a beautiful kit, and I would highly recommend it to anybody who's a fan of the film for sure, or wants something unique to add to their collection. Before we go, Ken, what is next on your list of things to do?
Sure. Well, things I'm already working on. I'm still working on my commission build of the Discovery from 2001: Space
Oh,
Odyssey.
that's right. Mm-hmm.
So quite a bit done on the pod bay. Nearly finished with that. I just have to do a few more things and some lighting on that, and then working forward on that. Also working on my very large spindrift.
Yeah.
I've done quite a bit of work on. It kind of went by the wayside once I got hot and heavy into this build because of attention. But definitely working on that, and some great ideas as far as it goes as well.
That's great. And again, just a reminder, Ken Spriggs has his own YouTube channel, and if you want to follow along these fantastic builds he's working on, just take a look at his channel, and you'll be entertained and amazed as he goes along his builds there. So thanks, Ken. And I cannot tell you how much fun it was really to work with you on this project. Hopefully we can do maybe a buddy build next year as well. We'll have to try to figure out some sort of project to work on. That's always the hardest part because there's so many things out there. But all right, Ken, it's always a pleasure having you on and talking to you. Thanks again, and we'll see you around. All right,
Yep.
Take care. Okay, well, welcome back, and I say that because Ken and I earlier recorded our final reveal, and it turns out we were able to get in touch with George after all. So here he is joining us on our final reveal is George Stephenson from Blackheart Models. Welcome, George.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure having you here. Thank you. So Ken and I did our final reveal earlier, and what we'd like to start off with, though, is if you wouldn't mind making a few comments about how the model came about in terms of producing it, and I remember you telling us a little story about that. Could you go into that for a sec?
Yeah. My old company, Geometric Design, back in the 90s, had the license with 20th Century Fox to produce kits based on Aliens, the movie, and Predator. And we really wanted to break into doing something other than just figure kits. And so we contacted Steve Wang, who was one of the creature effects artists who helped design. He and I were friends, but we had never worked together before, and I called him up and said, hey, man, we've known each other for a while. I want to work with you. Would you consider doing a design for me, an original design? And I talked to him about creating a pod, a little transport vehicle that the Predator come to Earth in at the beginning of the movie. Because he didn't just drop from the mothership through Earth's atmosphere and land on the planet.
Yeah.
So I told him, I want the design of this to be reminiscent of the Predator's armor, because all we knew about the Predator look was, what we saw in the movie. And so came up with the 6 sketches, and I loved them. Yeah. But at the time we were ready to get going with sculpting the kit, we had kind of a falling out with 20th Century Fox. Our figure kits were being bootlegged, and they wouldn't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And, our position was, if you're not going to do anything about it, then we're going to stop paying you royalties, and we did. We didn't pay them royalties anymore for 5 years.
Uh-huh.
They never asked us to, but because we were in that posture, we decided to scrap the idea of doing the pod kit. And so I kind of tucked away the sketches that he had done, and then I sold Geometric.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we started Blackheart in 2009, our focus was busts. But then I kind of borrowed from Geometric something that we had, a successful line that we had done that called Micromania. And the folks who bought Geometric from me weren't doing anything with the Micromania line.
Yeah.
And so I contacted them, and we worked it out so that I took the Micromania line, and those are like 4-inch figures of movie monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided, you know what? The technology is just right now to do the pod, micro scale model kit. It would be a lot smaller than what we were thinking of back in the 90s when we were thinking of doing the kit.
Mm-hmm.
And with digital sculpting and 3D printing, we knew we could really nail it. And so that's what we did. We got Daniele Angelosi, an Italian artist, to do the 3D sculpting. We got Onage over in China to do the 3D printing, and then we had them produce the kits for us, and here we are. I got to tell you, you absolutely knocked it out.
Well, thank you.
When I saw the color paint that you used,
mm-hmm.
it blew me away. It was just so cool looking, so different.
Thank you.
It was an alien looking color.
Yeah.
And Ken, you blew me away when you were demonstrating you had done with the canopy. It looked to me like you squeezed the ship and the canopy popped open and what you called the earmuffs popped out.
Right.
I'm gonna have to send Steve Wang the link to those because he's gonna be blown away by it.
Yeah.
When we got Daniele to when he finished his digital renderings, I sent Steve. I think it was when we actually had the 3D printed pieces. I sent photos of it to Steve Wang, and it blew his mind. And I was hoping someday you'd do something with that. Well, 20 years later, we did.
Yeah. So George, you and I were talking a little earlier about how, and I was commenting to you about how the canopy, if you will, or that hatch is connected. You had intended for it to be a little bit more convertible, if you will, or a little give us a little option being able to open it and close it, right?
The idea, it would have been too expensive to do it so that you could build it and then open it and close it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I wanted to do was to build it so that you could open it, or you could take the canopy off and then put it back on with a different setting, and
mm-hmm.
it's closed.
Yeah.
So I want the modeler to be able to do both,
mm-hmm.
But the way they engineered how the canopy plugs on, there's a little nub at the top. It just wouldn't bite enough, or wasn't solid enough or strong enough to keep that in one position.
I see.
Yeah.
So,
we learned something. We just do another hardware, another sci-fi vehicle.
Yeah.
And we'll do better. We'll do better next.
Sounds great. Again, I just wanted to compliment Blackheart on and your designs and all of that, because it really is just a beautiful kit. When you look at it, once it's painted, I mean, it's just striking, and it goes so well too with the look of the alien creature in the movie, and so really fantastic. And we definitely look forward to other kits that you have in mind. So you mentioned you do want to definitely try and produce some other kits. Mm-hmm.
We'll definitely be producing some other sci-fi vehicles, and the idea is to do vehicles where there's a figure or multiple figures that are associated with that vehicle.
Yeah.
So you got some, but I'm also open to ideas. So if there's some stuff that you'd like to see, let me know.
We'll definitely be thinking about that, right, Ken?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things Ken mentioned earlier this morning, and Ken, if you can elaborate that, one of the things you enjoyed about the kit was how not only were you working with a ship, but you were also working with a detailed figure.
Right, yeah, and even though it's smaller, about 4.5 inches, it was incredibly detailed.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably put equally as many paints onto that figure as I did the ship itself, including alclads, metallics, and his skin tones, and just he was just as involved. But it was fun because I was painting a figure, but I was painting a ship,
Right.
and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of times kits like that, I mean, kits will come with a figure, but it really isn't. You're painting it. It's not as a major part of the model, but it really was phase 2 of the model for me. Is once I was done with painting the ship, moved on to the figure, and it was just as involved, like you said, as doing everything else. Yeah. We really enjoyed working with it, and we definitely loved having you on. So thank you very much for joining us.
Yep. Thank you.
All right.
You both did a great job. You made me proud.
All right. Thanks, Ken. And thanks, George. All right. And that's it for now. And we will see you guys next time. Take care.
All right.
All right.
Bye. Bye-bye.